can't exhibit them anymore, or they actually don't know what's happened to them. So due to their ephemeral temporality, I kind of have used Peggy Phelan's idea of performance as being defined by its disappearance, and therefore we're kind of left with performance's inherent loss. So the sculptures, for me, have kind of turned towards the logic of events, situations, and kind of performances in some way. And we are left in this state of being without, and then that comes from the name son as well, son being French for without. So the works can be defined as past situations, and from the leftovers that remain, I've used the methodology of choreography as a means to explore the problematics of how we attempt to reinterpret, re-encounter, and return to the past. So kind of my methodology of choreography has come about from engaging with this sense of absence and loss and what's kind of left over, but also from Hesse's own logic of systems and repetition, and she's used the same kind of cube logic over and over and over again. And I've always kind of seen choreography as defined by a system in place for repetition, for things to be done, restaged, re-performed over and over again. Therefore, choreography in relation to the work on Hesse becomes a tool to recognize temporal modulation, which implies a continuous variation of things, and the objects therefore become events. So for me, the site of the work is a situation, and then the system is repetition to be re-performed and reenacted. So let's start with Son 1. 1968, latex metal, 72 by 7 by 1 inches. Washington State University Museum of Art, Pullman, Washington. Collection, piece no longer exists. 48 rectangular units made out of latex cast over a plaster mold and glued together with additional latex. The double row of rectangles, or rather shallow trays of material, extend in a 6 feet line of 24. It hangs tall and thin on the wall, and then extends 4 of its paired units onto the floor. Hanging. The work extends from art's usual containment of the wall into the very space where we walk and move. We search for meaning in each latex box, but constantly are referred to the next cube in the repeating chain, always moving onto something else. The frames, windows, containers, boxes are rendered through the act of removing from the outside or filling the inside, an act that moves between the interior and exterior, yet when we try to rest in either, the lack of clear visual content, whether dark opacity or light blankness, makes our vision defer to the next. Our vision is never contained within a single container, but always moved to something else. Something else. An empty gallery space, Fitchback Gallery, 1968, Chain Polymers exhibition. Empty containers. Large latex containers, cylindrical, rectangular, and cube-like, refracted the gallery floor and walls through a skin-like fabric that was originally translucent, but now the material, where what is left, is an opaque and syrupy yellow. Skin-like. Many of her works from her first solo sculpture exhibition have now discoloured, stiffened and disintegrated. Hesse herself was entirely aware of latex's eventual decay with time, or rather its constant unfolding from its sculptural containment and molecular structure. Whether the falling apart of the latex works is something that Hesse desired is open to question. However, I believe Hesse no doubt tried to explore the logic of temporal change, as the hardening of the liquid latex when it dried and the change of colour that it underwent when exposed to light was certainly unavoidable and must have been desirable. This logic of temporal change extends to involving both the spectator as well as the material object. Rubber, C5H8 latex, unsaturated hydrocarbon 5. The gallery space is not filled nor occupied, but nevertheless transformed and changed. The work's logic does not occupy space, but instead becomes an event or situation, distorting space, a situation that as a writer writing today, we can never experience. Son, absentia, absence, under influence of sign, without, archaic or poetic. Okay, so the first work, Song 1, which is this one, I was thinking the whole time about dancing without, and by using this concept of the empty container or empty frame and lack of kind of content as a way to then question the framing of dance, and to not only think as their sight as absence, but how it's framing its thinking through kind of the empty studio, and the studio as then a framework, and then the stage kind of becomes, in Smithson terms, like the non-site. So if the site is the artwork, the studio is then this kind of other space to then kind of explore the work. And the empty studio space for me was kind of like the empty box or empty container, and there's kind of a series of actions that take place within the studio whereby elements of dance are kind of dissected and temporally deployed and held up to produce new associations, emotions, fictions and meanings. So I worked through a logic to create 24 actions for an empty studio, a chain polymer of actions where each action begins and ends with the empty space, and we are forced to confront a state of being without dance rather than with. And then these works here are etchings and then ink drawings of movement notations for different actions that I've done. And then this one, I'm just going to play the film, I think it'll be interesting. This is Song 2, Within. Song 2, 1968. Materials, fiberglass and polyester resin. Each with 5 units, 38, 36 by 61 and 8 inches. Collection, 2 units, Whitney Museum of American Art, 1 unit, Saatchi Collection, London, 1 unit, Dr. Norman Messite, New York, 1 unit, Refco Group, Chicago. So the work is this one here. It's this one, which still somewhat exists, but it was weirdly split up into 5 separate sections and then sold to different places across the world. So you can't ever see the work in one full piece. I think they tried to in San Francisco like 10 years ago, but some of the things were broken, and then they tried remaking it and then kind of failed. So yeah, the work is split into multiple locations to question and speaks to the question of where is the work located, but the where calls for an investigative intention, where we should go and find the work. Rather than thinking about the place in which the work takes, we should ask, how does it take place? I turn towards thinking about its place within time, once within the present, now scattered into multiple remainders. Hesse has reclaimed what Briny Fur called the leftover as the sculptural material itself. The leftovers are part objects in time rather than space. Leftovers suggest fractured rather than continuous time, cut off from the past and the future. They act as echoes of the work's past event and encourage the return of reunion to become present again. But for now, we are stuck in the interval. And in this dance, I can skip it actually, otherwise we'll be here all day. So I did it 5 separate times. And they kind of all fall out of sync with one another. And the actual movement itself was kind of this idea of the kind of work itself. The majority of time in the work is actually I don't move, it's non-movement. And when I do move, it's kind of transitioning movement. And I was trying to think about kind of how you can relate movement to kind of leftovers in time, or kind of diffracting time, scattering time. And I was thinking about kind of scattering the dance sentence and what that means. And then on this wall here, I redid this dance tons of times on this. So I lay down on the floor and just dipped my feet in charcoal. So then these kind of become traces of the floor from that dance that I then sped up. So then the then leftovers of that dance has now become scattered itself. And then song 3, the final work, is kind of, I'm still kind of unsure with where it's going to go. I did some dances in relation to kind of how you can, it was like 49 exercises to read on a chair or something. But the logic behind that one is, I was thinking a lot about layering in this one, because it's just singular things layered over and over again. But that's still a work in progress. This whole table is kind of just my writing projects, photograph stills, books that I've kind of dipped in and out of. Yeah, it's just different. Loads of stuff going on, but thank you guys for being patient and being here. Thank you very much. I should have said it.